Jimmy Kimmel did not only break some records when it comes to his broadcast and how many people he was getting in seats to watch it on not only Disney streaming services, not only on YouTube, where I think it's probably nearing over 30 million views for the entire episode on YouTube right now. But then there's also the social media reposts on Twitter where people have reposted it in full, and some of those got millions of views. And then there's the clips that have been viewed not only on social media, which have millions of more views, but then have been shared on news networks. Well, it seems after the gigantic jump in viewership, Sinclair Broadcasting has changed its tune. Let's bring this up here right now, because this is quite a turnaround. In fact, I wonder, can we find the old post that Sinclair made and compare it to the new post that Sinclair made? I would like to do that. We're going to do that. We're going to compare the two messages that are just 8 days apart. That's how we are going to react to this, because I feel like just the gigantic gulf in difference here is quite astounding. So here is what they posted on September 18th. That was their announcement that they were going to be taking Sinclair off the airwaves, that his suspension, Sinclair is going to take Kimmel off the airwaves when he comes back, that his short-term suspension was not enough, and then called on the FCC, the same FCC that was saying, we're going to do this the hard way, or we're going to do this the easy way. The same FCC that Ted Cruz, Republican Senator Ted Cruz, compared to acting like the mafia. The same FCC which did not have the legal authority to shut these down, and is certainly an attack on the First Amendment when Brendan Carr is threatening government action for what is not unconstitutional speech. It's one thing if they would have just stayed back, let Sinclair, let Nexstar, who wants to go with the merger, which is already a problem when it comes to government coercion, but still allowed them to penalize Kimmel for what he said when it comes to mocking Donald Trump's lack of affection for Charlie Kirk's death, or what he said in reference to the right trying to prove that the shooter was anybody but one of theirs, which many have interpreted to mean that the shooter was right-wing, while other were, of course, Kimmel, and this is the thing with free speech laws in the United States, could argue that his point was actually no. Number one, you'd have to argue that if he was lying, that he did it purposefully in order to bring legal consequence to him. But also, you would have to prove that he wasn't saying, well, no, I'm not saying he's right-wing. I'm saying that the right wing did everything they could to prove that he was a lefty immediately, because everyone engages in the rat race. And he could probably not maybe convince the wide swath of the American people, but could he defend that in a court of law? Absolutely. Absolutely. And it seems he's probably convinced his viewership. Either way, if they just waited back, if they just sat back and saw, instead of doing this, instead of the FCC and Brendan Carr opening his mouth on Benny Johnson's show, talking about how he's going to go after Benny Johnson's, intellectual adversaries on the other side, the people who are against him politically, against Donald Trump politically, and then Trump coming out and naming names for who needs to be shut down next, commanding ABC, shut them down. If they just would have kept their mouth shut and didn't post stuff like this, it probably would have went much better for them. This is what they said 8 days ago. Sinclair says Kimmel suspension not enough. Calls on FCC and ABC to take additional action. Sinclair, the nation's largest ABC affiliate group, objects to recent comments made by Mr. Kimmel concerning the assassination of Charlie Kirk. As discussions with ABC earlier today, Sinclair decided to indefinitely preempt Jimmy Kimmel Live beginning tonight. Following that, by the way, indefinitely, and it lasted 8 days. Following these discussions, ABC has suspended production of Jimmy Kimmel Live. Mr. Kimmel's remarks were inappropriate and deeply insensitive at a critical moment. We believe broadcasters have a responsibility to educate and elevate respectful, constructive dialogue. We appreciate FCC Chairman Carr's remarks today, and this incident highlights the critical need for the FCC to take immediate regulatory action to address control held over local broadcasters by big national networks. Sinclair's ABC stations will air a special in remembrance of Charlie Kirk this Friday during Jimmy Kimmel Live's time slot. The special will also air across stations this weekend in addition. Sinclair will not lift the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel Live on our stations until formal discussions are held with ABC regarding the network's commitment to professionalism and accountability, and also calls upon Kimmel to issue a direct apology to Kirk's family, Furthermore, we ask Mr. Kimmel to make a meaningful personal donation to Kirk family and Turning Point USA. This was always a non-starter. The idea that they were going to get Jimmy Kimmel to donate to a political cause that he does not believe in, a political cause that if the people who watch him saw him donating to would ask, okay, what do you believe? Do you believe in anything? You can't say that, you're against Trump and the Trump movement if you're going to be giving money to organizations that are run to support Trump and the MAGA movement on college campuses or wherever. Turning Point does it on college campuses. It's a big college campus, organizing group. So it was a non-starter. As for, the personal donation to his family and Turning Point USA, they were reaching so far, and they overreached. They did not get no donation for Charlie Kirk's family. They did not get any donation for Turning Point USA. He also did not apologize to Charlie Kirk's family directly. Jimmy Kimmel did not apologize on his network whatsoever. He spoke to why people might have not liked what he had to say in that particular moment, and he can understand a grieving widow. He spoke a lot to that, but he did not apologize. So all of the demands that Sinclair put forward, all of the asks, because there's a question, because they say they will not lift until formal discussions with ABC are held, and then goes on to talk about all the things they want. So you could try to say that the only thing that was a demand was a real discussion. But immediately they asked for all these other things, and none of them were done. No apology, no donation to Charlie Kirk's family, and no donation to Turning Point USA. The only thing that I imagine that did happen was that there was a discussion between Sinclair and ABC. This is what they posted today. Sinclair, statement on the return of Jimmy Kimmel Live. Now, mind you, since they posted their first statement, Jimmy Kimmel's first show back was not broadcast by Sinclair, and it was not broadcast by Nexstar. They were nervous to broadcast it. They were nervous from further FCC government action, and they were nervous about, even if they can't be defeated in a court of law, of having all this regulatory bunk thrown at them and all the money and time it would cost for an industry that is, not swimming in it necessarily. Either way, here's what they said. Sinclair today announced that it will end its preemption of Jimmy Kimmel Live, and the show will return this evening on Sinclair's ABC affiliates. Mind you, this is after 30 million views on YouTube, 6.9 million live viewers, all the streams that have come afterwards on those programs, all of the media, social media viewership, as people have reposted the full thing online and it's gotten millions of views because some people just, hey, the full thing on social media, that's lovely, I don't need to go pay for it. And of course, all the clips. So no matter what Sinclair did to turn off the lights, Jimmy Kimmel got much more viewership than they have in years. And that is the effect of blowback. That is the effect of people hearing what the FCC did and getting lambasted for its attack on the First Amendment. It was lambasted not only by every other late night talk show host or anything that could be considered that, by Jimmy Fallon, by the still running, because they're not coming off the airwaves until the end of 2026, Stephen Colbert, by Seth Meyers, all the other Jimmy, Jimmy Fallon. There's, of course, John Oliver, Jon Stewart. In those programs alone, I was seeing 6.3 million there, 6.7 million there on the YouTube, not even on the original streaming platforms. And then you got other big TV show behemoths like South Park, which did a whole thing on Brendan Carr getting dominated, getting beaten up, getting crushed, they could not have tried to go after Brendan Carr more as a Trump sycophant who keeps coming back. I wonder if we can, to show you just how far this phenomenon went. I think I might steal from from Brian Taylor Cohen, because he clipped the stuff we're talking about here. Here it is.
An offensive government app? I better go speak with the president right away. Oh, there you are, Mr. President. I need to talk to you.
No, Brendan Carr, no!
Whoa!
The FCC guy must have shitty ankles.
Mr. President, I really need to speak with you.
Not now, Brendan. Brendan Carr. Satan won't eat his carrots.
Oh, come on, Satan. You're eating for two now. Carrots are good for you, see?
No, Brendan Carr, don't do it.
Oh, wow. This is the best soup ever. That one. Oh, oh God.
Yeah, they went a little over the top.
Mr. President, I'm feeling much better.
Brendan Carr.
Whoa. Oh. Mr. Carr, can you hear me? We understand you're head of the FCC, is that correct? All right, well, I'm very sorry, but you do appear to have toxoplasmosis from exposure to cat feces. We need you to get some rest. Try not to move.
Will the head of the FCC be okay, Doctor?
His bones are healing, so he may regain full range of motion. But if the toxoplasmosis parasite gets to his brain, I'm afraid he may lose his freedom of speech. We'll do everything we can.
Mr. Carr, why do you keep meddling in my plans? Oh, I've been trying to convince the boss to get rid of the baby. I am next in line to be president. That baby cannot be born. And if you continue to interfere, I will make things very difficult for you. We can do this the easy way, or we can do it the hard way.
Now, obviously, you know, there's a few references to the actual scandal in here. Now, him having projectile feces that launches him physically into the air before turning around in the White House bedroom and being thrown out the window. That, as far as we know from publicly available information, is not confirmed, right? We don't know that that happened. We don't know that he was covered in cat feces. We don't know. These are things that we don't know. This line at the end is a direct reference to what Brendan Carr said on Benny Johnson's podcast, which is crazy. It's crazy to see, you know, how fast the South Park machine works. But I mean, they did react in real time to a lot of stuff that was going on. If you go look at the release dates of a lot of their old shows and what the topics are talking about, it's not that far ahead of when these topics first arrived. So them taking that quote and in such a short period, in a period of less than 10 days, from Brendan Carr saying it on a podcast to it getting referenced with this this comical version of J.D. Vance telling Brendan Carr like a mafioso, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. So this went from the political realm to mass media to social media to pop culture. I mean, most Americans had no clue who Brendan Carr even was before he went out there on Benny Johnson's podcast and decided that he was going to attack the First Amendment when it comes to broadcasting rights. Look, this isn't really surprising when it comes to how Trump has spoken. Trump has in the past talked about how you need to go after the broadcasting rights of those outlets that disagree with him. When asked like what justification he has for targeting the broadcasting rights of any of these organizations, they're licensed to broadcast. So he's saying you cannot broadcast here, saying they're not allowed to. If they're going to do that, what justification do they have? And he says that they're not nice enough to him. That 97% of the time they're bullying me. And, you know, the president of the United States, obviously a victim of bullying, doesn't appreciate being bullied by these networks. Sadly, bullying in this country is constitutionally protected. And even if it was 97%, it's a bogus study. But even if it was 97%, or if it was 95, 90, 80, 70, it doesn't matter. It could be 100%. They're allowed to broadcast that as long as they are not, for example, knowingly lying, which was the case, for example, with Fox News when they faced that Dominion lawsuit that lost them $80 million because they had emails of their staff talking to each other, acknowledging that they all knew it was a crock of shit, and they just hope Trump stops talking about it so they have to stop pandering to his infantile base. That's from Tucker Carlson. You don't believe that? That's public court record. Go look it up for anybody who thinks that Tucker Carlson particularly respects his audience. So Donald Trump suing an outlet for interviewing Harris in a non-aggressive enough way, saying it interfered with the election. Of course, he always sued for moderate amounts. In that case, it was only $1 billion. Trying to increase his network by 33%. And he gets them to settle. It's not only the case with these organizations who, sometimes will settle to avoid the trouble. Sometimes will fight because they don't like the president and sets, or they think, he'll come around back for more. Sometimes instead of news outlets, it's going to be lawyers. That's how he got a bunch of free legal services, threatening legal action and saying if they do legal services for causes he cares about for free, billions of dollars worth of it, then they'll let them buy. They'll let them buy. They won't give them any trouble. That is how the mafia operates, if you do some bad favors for me, I'll do some favors for you. I'll look the other way at that law you didn't violate anyway. So, of course, some of them can make the determination that they can fight the Trump administration for the next 4 years. Others have made a determination that they'd rather wouldn't. That goes for law firms. That goes for broadcasters. It's just in this case, this instance of it caught wind. I think most of the American public did not know that Trump said we need to remove the broadcasting licenses of broadcasters that disagree with me. Most of the American public do not know that the Pentagon just changed their standards under Pete Hegseth's directive, telling them, hey, journalists who report here can only release accredited and confirmed and approved information from the Pentagon. No, you're not allowed to report on leaks. You can only report on stuff that isn't leaked. No. If they want to report anything at all, it has to be their stuff that they're putting out there. They're asking people to replace their journalists at the Pentagon with stenographers, people who just parrot what the Pentagon is saying. They want it to work in the Pentagon how it works in Moscow, Russia, to make it completely blunt. That's when it comes to what you are allowed to report as a Pentagon reporter and what you're not allowed to. Of course, they can only hold that authority over the Pentagon. There's a question of the First Amendment when it comes to that, a question of its constitutionality. It might be illegal, but they certainly can't cover the rest of the country. But the fact that they're holding up these standards, that Trump, when he was confronted with this, he couldn't defend it. He was asked about this by a reporter, like, do you think this is good? He said, he couldn't defend it. He knew he couldn't defend it. He condemned it. Is this another time where Pete Hegseth is going out on a branch without asking the president of the United States, like he did when it came to freezing aid to Ukraine? I don't know. But Trump and the administration around him has a record of attacking and besieging the First Amendment. Sometimes it's in smaller ways that we're more used to when it comes to the conservative right. For example, him saying that flag burning should be illegal and the people who do it should be imprisoned. They're now trying to pursue it, though, actually. They're trying to say that flag burning itself is violent. Now, you might think that that's kind of ridiculous to say that burning any piece of fabric, especially if you do it in a contained environment to make sure, you don't catch a building on fire or something, that is violent. But they say it's an incitement to violence. Mind you, somebody can burn a flag and then make a speech about why they're against it. And all those people, and that isn't an incitement to violence. Like, hey, I'm against our war here. And that's why I'm burning the flag, because I stand for X amount of horrible I'm against it. And they can do that. That's constitutionally protected. I remember hearing these free speech people, and I know that's ridiculous to say, the free speech people. But no, I mean people who, hey, I got into politics because of Gamergate. I believed in integrity and video game journalism. Okay? I join Trump because I'm against the woke. I want comedians to tell it as how it is. I don't want to get canceled because I said a funny joke around the water cooler. I want people to be able to have the First Amendment. I'm a free speech absolutist. You'd hear that a lot. I'm a free speech absolutist. And you know where I would hear these critiques of the Western world? When J.D. Vance goes to Europe to lecture them on free speech. Oh my gosh, somebody can get arrested for burning a Quran? That's ridiculous. Thank God we have the First Amendment here where you can do such things like that because, we're not scared of a little bit of freedom. We're not scared of getting offended. We're not scared of that. Those silly Europeans. My God, somebody could have their house knocked on for a social media post that isn't directly citing violence. My God, look at those silly Brit bongers and they're, oh, crumpets and tea, ridiculous foreigner, ha ha ha. And they went to Europe to lecture all the Europeans on the First Amendment. And then we come back home and then we tell broadcasters and shows that are mocking Trump, we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way. Oh, you interviewed Harris? You weren't aggressive enough in the way we want you to? $1 billion lawsuit. You shouldn't be allowed to broadcast if you're mostly against me. You have to be fair to me. We'll only let you broadcast if you're fair to me. Oh, you protested in a way I didn't like? You know, how about no? How about you're not allowed to do that? You're going to prison for years. That's what he wants. He wants years of prison time. Years of prison time for somebody making a statement over the American flag. If we have to sustain ourselves and hold ourselves back as morons from the Westboro Baptist Church go to veteran funerals and say, your dead husband was a queer, and they do that and they hold their stupid signs up and they horrific, disgusting nonsense. There's entire organizations made just to block them from harassing the families of dead veterans. If we have to sustain that, if we have to deal with that, if we have to, as a society, say that's fine, why does that not extend over to some some skinny college kid burning an American flag and then saying his Mao Zedong shall rise again, or whatever? Does it really matter? Does it matter to your freedom? Does it matter to my freedom? That's the question. That's the real question. Does it matter to your and my freedom if somebody goes and burns that flag? No. So it's not our business. But the Trump administration has decided, hey, maybe they don't think that they can win the midterms or 2028 without grabbing onto the media. But the logic that doesn't make any sense to me here behind Trump's entire scheme is if you believe what he's saying, this whole plan was superfluous. It made no sense, and all he had to do was nothing, and he would have won. And at this point, we can say Jimmy Kimmel has won. Tens of millions of more views. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if across all platforms, nearly 100, if you're talking about what got reported in the press, I wouldn't be surprised if a majority of Americans have seen some segment of his return show, either through clips, direct viewership, or otherwise. I mean, the majority of adult, I'm sure babies and stuff are not tuning in, but you get the idea. Either a majority or very close to a majority. When we already have 30 million views on YouTube, you add everything else in, you're getting closer and closer to 60, 70 million, who knows? But he's gotten tons more attention. The rest of his stuff that isn't even related to it is getting a lot more viewership than what it was getting before. He has gotten a resurgence. Donald Trump, either unattended to himself or unbeknownst to him, he blew it straight back into late night hosting, into late night TV. He did it single-handedly. So I got to give Trump credit. Once again, he is the constant friend of the media. He is the enemy, but the friend of the media. He's the enemy of the media when it comes to their rights and how they're allowed to report, but he's the friend of the media when it comes to just being a subject of reporting. He did the thing. You tell people not to look at something, and what do people go do? They go and they look at it. They go and they look at it, and they go and listen to it. So Jimmy Kimmel is back. He's got mega viewership, and the people who were not broadcasting them before, Nexstar Sinclair's caved. Sinclair was the one that dug in deepest. Oh, we're, indefinitely, we're going to stop broadcasting. 8 days. 8 days, man. 8 days. That is such a short period. I don't know how I can try to summarize how short that was in comparison to the way they were banging their chest for political donations for Turning Point USA before that. But they caved. Sinclair caved. Trump blew life back into them, and all he had to do was do nothing. And that's what I don't get. Trump said that they were failing. Trump said that Jimmy Kimmel's numbers were terrible. He said that, nobody watches him. He's a no-talent hack. Screw Jimmy Kimmel. And you know what? Jimmy's not my cup of tea. I don't know if it's really for my demographic. I consume media in other ways. But If all of that's true, why do you have to get Brendan Carr to go out there and take Jimmy Kimmel off the airwaves? Why do you need to use the FCC to intimidate Jimmy Kimmel? I mean, if he knows the media, and Trump's not stupid on media stuff. I mean, I think he's not exactly intelligent when it comes to, getting a country's name right, or like the history of the Balkans, or like we can like get into areas of a lack of knowledge, which Trump has, which is plenty of areas. But when it comes to media, he's not stupid. I mean, he of course he had his show The Apprentice. He was, a star on WWE programming. He had tons and tons of branding in order to get his name out there. I mean, the Trump brand is really well known, really well placed. People knew it. I mean, it's not always been known for extremely fine dining necessarily, or high living, but people associated, especially working class people, associated Trump with some form of luxury, some amount of draped gold, That's why he was able to go through these ventures, Trump steak, Trump perfume, people, the image of luxury which he had created, which it's not that easy to create an image of luxury while not actually necessarily being that luxurious or being that expensive to produce, as he made many of these goods in China at not exactly high prices. So he knows branding. He knows branding quite well. So why wouldn't he be smart enough to just sit back and let Sinclair and Nexstar wanting its merger, Sinclair being Sinclair, why didn't he just let them do their work, take Jimmy Kimmel off the airwaves, and put Bob Iger in an extremely difficult position? Why have Brendan Carr go out there and soldier on like this and directly start talking about how they're going to intimidate these people off the airwaves? Stephen Colbert had already gone down. I mean, he's going down, as the midterms come closer in like late 2026. But I mean, the plan is to take Stephen Colbert off the airwaves eventually. Why does he need to get involved and do this? If what he's saying is true, he could have just sat back and waited. In fact, if Donald Trump did sit back and wait, I don't know where Jimmy Kimmel would be right now. Would Jimmy Kimmel be coming back? If there was not this backlash from Brendan Carr saying what he said about, easy way or hard way, if there was not this constant drumbeat from Donald Trump naming the people he wants to be taken off the air because they're too critical of him, and that's the way he frames it. That's the way he says it, not me, because they're 97% critical, because that's the way he doesn't like it. If that's, if they just didn't do any of that, there's a good chance Jimmy Kimmel would still be suspended. Sinclair would not be bringing him back. They would not be getting the counter pressure that they're getting. Nexstar would not be getting the counter pressure that we're getting. I mean, hell, there's a chance that he still wouldn't even be streaming on Disney Plus. He still wouldn't be back. Bob Iger, Disney CEO, might have considered differently, because there were people canceling their subscriptions. There were people who were upset. Of course, his viewer base wanted him back. I mean, the reaction that Trump did in order to force Kimmel out, and that thing was, he was done. Trump talked about it like it was over. He said, Fallon down, Kimmel down, Seth and Jimmy are next, in reference to Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers. So he thought this was over. He thought that Jimmy Kimmel was a dead man. But he did an Undertaker setup, not because of Jimmy Kimmel, necessarily had the best speech ever when he came back, even though he really chose the moment well. We watched it on the program yesterday before, of course, Jimmy Kimmel decided that he needed a cut of my stream. But of course, ABC did. But I mean, he chose the moment to connect with the audience with a few jokes at the start. He made a broad appeal to freedom of expression for everyone. He directly pointed out Brendan Carr's comments with the sources. He spent the time rallying on the First Amendment, playing Ted Cruz's comments, playing a bunch of people who would regularly disagree with him, defending him. I mean, he used the moment well, considering all the viewership he got, right? So he went from what Trump thought was dead in the water to probably the biggest crowd and probably his biggest moment in broadcasting history for him. Will Jimmy Kimmel ever have this much attention again? Probably not. Will Jimmy Kimmel ever be the center of politics like this again? Not to this extent, where the entire late night genre rallies around him, pop culture pays attention, the whole country pays attention, all because this little bald man who nobody knew before opened his mouth. He went from dead in the water the top of the ratings. So why did Trump do it? That's the question I'm left with. And the only answer I have is old habits die hard. That's the only explanation I have. Donald Trump is media focused. We know that on January 6th, he was watching the news reports on his phone, sipping his Diet Coke for hours, waiting for Rudy Giuliani to work his magic and see if he could overturn the election. We know that Donald Trump constantly pays attention to the commentary around him, both on mainstream news programs like CNN and the other liberal networks, but also on Fox, also on the other networks. He pays attention to what different broadcasters say about him, what different reporters say about him. He has his ear down on the train tracks when it comes to the media and contemporary commentary on the president of the United States. So he is hyper-focused on it. So he should have the knowledge to be able to say, Jimmy Kimmel, how popular is he anyway? Ignore it. Let him blow himself up. Don't interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake is I think the expression. If you wait long enough by the river, you see the bodies of your enemies flow down. That's the idea. But he didn't. Even though he should have been smart enough. Why? I think it's his obsession. And it's just what he's comfortable with doing. Number one, his obsession, before we get into what he's comfortable with doing. Donald Trump is obsessed with the media. Donald Trump is obsessed with his image. Donald Trump is a man who made his career off of branding. Bold branding decisions and bold branding actions. And so to see anybody going after that branding, he sees them as an enemy to his business, an enemy to his political project. And so seeing the opportunity to go after it, he went after it in virulent defense of his brand. And so I think he really did think by knocking these guys out, he's defending his brand because what will replace them will be nicer to him. Maybe what replaces them will actually not be nicer. Maybe it'll be people who are even funnier, and who are going to even be more critical. Or maybe not critical, but funnier, and therefore they get more eyes. Who knows? But I think that's one thing. He's virulently in defense of his brand. He's media obsessed, and so that created the reaction, I think, obsessive about his self-image. But I also think that this is him doing what he's comfortable doing. Donald Trump has used this type of tactic before, and he's talked about this type of tactic before, of this type of threatening of government action to try to coerce private company obedience. I think that this is probably one of the most open instances of it when it comes to broadcasting. Many people were really nervous when it came to Skydance and the merger that was happening when Colbert was fired, and many people pointed to that. But I think how you train is how you fight, is how I was told when I was boxing in high school. Okay, if you train a certain way, if you go and you jab a certain way, and I was an infighter. You had to get close and you had to go to the body, right? Body snatcher. That's the idea. And then all of a sudden, I get in there and I want to fight like Muhammad Ali. I want to shuffle my feet around and I want to pretend that I'm not just some Clubber Langing style barbarian. I also kind of fit the image, but I want to pretend I'm something now I'm not. I'm going to fail because I don't know I don't have that speed. I didn't train that speed. I didn't train to jab that way. I didn't train to throw my right hand. So if Trump goes out there and he has to be trained on subtlety, it's going to take a lot more effort for him to figure that out. So I think he just kind of had an instinctive pounce. He saw Colbert bleeding. He went down. He saw Jimmy Kimmel bleeding. He thought he could help him get down, pushing the knife a little bit. So instead of the prudence that might have actually won Trump the day when it comes to taking out another one of his critics in the media, actually led to his resurgence because he fought like he trained, which is aggression, constant pressure, constant attack. Don't ever apologize. Go harder, go harder, go harder. And in this instance, his attack was a Wile E. Coyote style stomp on a rake. The question is, do you think he'll do it again? Do you think he's learned his lesson? And how long will the American people pay attention if the FCC tries something else again in a few months, or if Trump calls Brendan Carr into a room and says, Brendan, we need to do this the easy way or the hard way? I think ideals aren't being upheld. Yeah.